If your potatoes are subject to potato blight like mine are, I want to show you in this video that it is still okay to harvest your potatoes if you catch them early enough. As you can see in front of me, I've got a number of containers that I've been growing potatoes in, but unfortunately they have succumbed to potato blight. There is a recent video on my channel that shows you how I identified that this was potato blight compared to other potential potato diseases. So that video might be worth a look if you suspect you've got potato blight on your potatoes. But in this video I'm going to demonstrate to you that you can still harvest your potatoes if you've got potato blight, and I'll show you what I've got in containers. And all the advice I gave on the previous video and also in this video will apply to whether you're growing your potatoes in containers like I am here, or whether you're growing the traditional method directly into the ground. Now these are a second early variety of potatoes called Charlottes. If you're based in the USA, you'll know them as determinant potatoes. In the UK we classify our potatoes slightly different as first early, second earlies and main crop. And if you are from the United States, then main crop potatoes will be more commonly known to you as indeterminate potatoes. But these are determinants or second earlies, and these were planted around about 13 weeks ago. And the harvest window for these types of potatoes is normally between 13 to 15 weeks. So these are in the window, they'd be harvested anyway. And quite luckily for me, the blight has occurred quite late in the growing process, and therefore they're near enough ready for harvest anyway. I have got some other potatoes grown in my garden which are main crop potatoes or indeterminants. I've got 6 containers of those, but I've taken them well away from these because I'd want to limit the possibility of the blight spreading. And of course, because they're main crop or indeterminate potatoes, they need 16 to 18 weeks from when they're planted to be able to harvest them, so they need longer in the containers. Now in my previous video I explained that if you catch the blight early enough, it's still possible to salvage your potato crop, and that's what we're going to do today. You can see here that these leaves have died right back now because since I identified blight I knew that I'd be harvesting them. I haven't watered them. And also what's really crucial before you harvest potatoes is to check your stems, because what you want to make sure is the blight hasn't progressed down to the stems. If it's gone so far it will be okay, but if it's very close or actually going beyond the level of your compost or your soil, that could possibly mean that your potatoes might be affected. I can see here by looking at my stems that very little of the stems are affected by blight. In fact, the stems look quite healthy at low level, which gives me confidence that the potatoes are going to be absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do now is empty a few of these containers just to show you that blight affected potatoes are still perfectly okay to harvest, and we'll also see how many potatoes we've got in each container. Now if you have identified blight on your potato leaves and possibly on your stems, the important thing to do is cut off the foliage as quickly as possible, and cut the foliage right down to near the level of the soil and discard any of those leaves. The reason that you'll need to do it as soon as possible is that the blight can spread from the leaves to the stems and eventually down to your tubers or potatoes. And once it gets to the potatoes, they're completely gone, they're useless. You'll need to discard your harvest completely. So by cutting off the stems at the earliest point, it means you'll save the potatoes. And if you are growing lots of potatoes, you might not want to harvest them all at once. As long as you've got rid of the leaves and the stems, the potatoes will be perfectly okay in the ground if the blight hasn't reached the potatoes yet. Keeping the potatoes in the ground or in the container for a couple of weeks after you've removed all the leaves and the stems will help them to harden the skins a little bit, and that makes them better for storage. So the first thing I'm going to do is completely cut off all of these stems with my secateurs and discard the foliage. And that'll leave me with the container, which I'm now just going to tip up, and then we can just salvage our potatoes. Now I'll just bring the camera a little bit closer so you can see me rummaging around just to see how many potatoes we've got in this container. Now I'm just going to start to break the compost up. I haven't watered the compost for a few days, so therefore the compost is quite dry. But as you can see, there's lots of potatoes in here. Absolutely loads, to be honest. Just break the compost up as much as I can just to soften it. So I think that's nearly all of them now. Just having a final sift through, because you always find those little stragglers that you never thought you'd miss. Here's another one. If I just tip the container back into here now and show you what I've got. That is a really good harvest considering that these are blight affected, second early or determinant potatoes. These types of potatoes are never usually as big as main crop or indeterminate potatoes because they're often referred to as salad or summer potatoes as well. One of the big reasons I grow this variety is once these are washed, I'll give them a good wash in water now. You don't need to peel them. Potatoes have a very thin skin on them. Even these little ones here are absolutely fantastic in salads. So I'm really pleased with that, and as you can see, for a crop that's been affected by blight, I've still got plenty of potatoes to use, and I've still got other containers that I'll harvest in exactly the same way. So as you can see, even though my potatoes are blight affected, I haven't lost my harvest. There's some really good potatoes in there, and in fact most of them are the size I would expect for this variety. If I'd noticed the blight and ignored it or left it too long, it's quite possible that I wouldn't have been able to harvest any of these. Now with these remaining containers, what I'm going to do today, I'm not going to harvest them, but I am going to cut the leaves and the stems off right down to the level of the compost, and I'll leave them in the containers for a couple of weeks. One reason for that is I've already got plenty of potatoes to use from what I've just harvested, so I won't need these just yet. Secondly, by leaving them in containers, it allows the skins to harden a little bit and will make them much better for storage. In addition to these, I've got 6 containers of main crop potatoes that will be harvesting round about the end of August, and that should give me a really good supply of potatoes for the remainder of the year. Now as we are at the beginning of July, I am going to be planting more seed potatoes in 4 of my containers for my Christmas potatoes. And because they are in containers, when the temperature starts to drop and we start to get frost, I'll be able to take the containers inside, and that's something you can't do with traditional planted potatoes outside. So I hope I've demonstrated in the video that even if your potatoes are affected by blight, you can still get a really good harvest of potatoes if you catch the blight early enough. And I do hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit, vegetables and flowers, and 1 or 2 recipe ideas, don't forget to press the subscribe button. And I'll see you all on the next video.